Hello, my name is Neil Davidson and I'm the founder of Raw Umber Studios. Welcome to another online portrait drawing session. This video mimics the structure of a regular life drawing class. We'll show you 3 photographs on the screen, one for 10 minutes, one for 20 minutes and one for 30 minutes, and it's your job to draw the photograph that you see. Lizet will be joining us. She'll be doing a demonstration in the bottom corner of the screen and giving hints and tips. Once you've finished, don't forget to post your work to Instagram and hashtag it with #RawUmberLive. Right, let's get started.
Hello everyone and welcome to another Raw Umber portrait video. This week, to shake things up, I'm going to focus on the method used in Bern Hogarth's book. I hope I say that right. So first, as always, I'm just going to start by placing my portrait on the paper. And he uses a lot of ovals. So the first oval will be the front of the head. And then for the back of the head, because it's a profile, we make sure to place another oval, but just laying on its side. And this oval should be 4 times the size of half the first oval. The top of the eyes would be the midpoint in Bern's method. So now we already have a few measurements in. We've got the midpoint for the eyes, and we've got 3/3 for the length of the head. Now I'm going to use the same method that I use for my other drawings. I divide the face up into 3/3, with the top one being the hairline. And from there I can start roughly placing my features. With the lower half of her face, we've already got that line of the oval, but you can see that her chin sticks out a little bit more, so I'm going to bring that out a little bit more. For the eyes, what really helps me is to first put a nice plane of darkness down, and then later I'll cut into it. But for now, it's just a placeholder. putting in the hair, and always make sure that the hair lays on top of the skull and is not glued to the skull. So we need to give the hair a little bit of volume. The ear will be located between the brow and the lower half of the nose, and I can roughly place that in. Next, I'm placing the neck. I'm sort of looking at where the lines point. So for instance, that one points to the side of her mouth and the other one is just behind the ear. And then I could put the rest of her hair in. So those are the basic proportions that he uses, and I think they've been reasonably successful. I'm just now gonna refine the features a little bit, trying to spend 1 minute on the eyes, then 1 minute on the nose, 1 minute on the on the mouth. Important thing is not to take one of these features too far and then neglect the others. It's important to always keep your drawing progressing at the same level overall. And this is because everything relates to each other. So I think it's a saying, you don't want to miss the trees because of the forest. So basically, you don't want to get lost in the details and then miss the big picture. Maybe it's the forest and then miss the trees? Okay, so next what I'm going to do is I'm just rubbing in with my finger very, very lightly and just adding a few soft and a few harder lines just for a finish. And then we are already done with the 10-minute pose, and let's see where we can do in a 21. So here we are for the 20-minute pose, and I want to expand on this same method, but now look at the face from the front. So I'm going to start by placing her on the paper, and I'm just trying to look for that central line, so the line going from the middle of the chin to in between the eyes to the middle of the forehead. I'm just going to correct that a little bit, just because I think it's a little bit straighter. And as per usual, I'm going to divide that up into 3/3. And according to Byrne, the width of the face is 2/3. So I'm going to take that first third and measure it on both sides of the center line to make sure my oval is the right width. Now I'm putting in that midpoint, which according to Burns should be the top of the eyelids. So now I'm filling in the features, and taking that width, the eye should fit in 5 times alongside. Now, some people may have been here for the Loomis method as well, and he basically says the head is more of a wheel shape. So the sides of that wheel, according to Byrne, are 4 times this width of the eye. So that's where the angle of the forehead is on both sides. Now I'm just going to fit in the eye sockets by just lightly glazing them down. And the nose should be 1 eye width wide. So I'm going to put that in. And it's sort of a wedge shape. So a little bit wider at the bottom, a little bit more narrow at the top. And a small thing with the front of the nose is that that dips a little bit lower. So I'm just going to rub that out a little bit. So now we've got a good idea of the planes of the top half of the face, and the light's coming from the left. So everything that is turning away on the right side of the face, I will shade in. And at this point I realized that the top of the eyes wouldn't be at the half of the face. She definitely has a longer lower face anyway, so I'm gonna bring those lids up. In this method as well, the eye sockets should extend to halfway that nose, so halfway that third. So I'm just going to put it there. So I think it's definitely a good call to put those eyes a little bit higher. So another thing I like to do is take a little brush, could be synthetic or hog, and just rub that over the shadows the same way as you would use a stump or your finger. So some videos I've been using a stump, some videos I've been using my finger, and this video I thought it would be fun to just use the brush just to show the differences. And I like the brush because it's very soft and it doesn't get your fingers dirty. It's also very precise, so I quite enjoy working with it. One little point about the eyes: shade them in completely and then pick out the lights. What I see a lot in students' drawings is bright white whites of the eyes, and I know they're called the whites of the eyes, and yes, they're technically white, but they're still in a receding plane of that eye socket, so very often it'll be a white in the shade, which is not a bright white. One thing that helps me is squinting a lot and seeing how that disappears. So moving down to the lower half of the face, the bottom of the cheekbone should be at the same point of the nose, and the angle of them should be a 30-degree angle from the inner corner of the eyes. So I'm just gonna divide that up. So this angle should be where they should stop. And that's sort of also where the folds are if somebody's a little bit older, for instance. Looking at the mouth area, you can divide that up into thirds again. So Byrne speaks a lot about the barrel of the mouth. So if you look at your own mouth or feel your own mouth, the corners of the mouth are further back and the front middle of the mouth is a little bit further out. So you can imagine it sort of goes round like that, like a barrel. And the size of that barrel will be the middle of the eyes according to him, but actually in her case I think they're a bit more narrow and more like 1/3 of the eye, so I'm going to place it there. Mouth always turns down a little bit, but she looks pretty unhappy right now, so I'm just going to put those corners up a little bit more. Then the lower bit of that third is the chin, and he describes it more as a block. So I'm just going to put that block of the chin in. So those are all his main measurements. There's a few left. The angle break of the chin lines up with the sides of the mouth. So horizontally it's on the same place. And I'm just going to put the neck and the ear in. As the hair, using the same method I used in the 10-minute drawing. So this is everything that Byrne has to say about general measurements for any portrait from the front. And what I'm going to do now, because I don't think it looks very much like her, I'm just going to adjust these shapes very, very slightly. For instance, with the mouth, I'm going to put a little bit more of a curve on the top lip, and I'm going to move around the features, trying to make them a little bit more like her. So with these drawing methods like the Byrne-Hogarth method or the Loomis method, that always sort of seem to overlap slightly, but at the same time always be a little bit different. I think just pick the one that suits you best. But also for me, I realize that when I do them, the face always ends up looking a little bit generalized, a little bit fake. So what I then tend to do is go over things and just tweak them a little bit using the structure that the method has given me, and then adjust things so it looks more like the model I see in front of me. So with the eyes, what I tend to do is I shade them in completely because, like I said, they're on the declining plane of the eyes. And then I pick out the lights. So often that will be the top arch of the eyebrows and the lower lids. And I haven't really drawn the eyes in, but I kind of, that sounds like a bit of a cop-out, but I kind of do it on purpose because in the eyes you can get very lost very quickly, and then you'll end up with a completely unfinished drawing with just some eyes. So I tend to leave the eyes as the very last thing I do, just because I know of that natural tendency and I'd rather have a drawing that's sort of finished everywhere. But that's up to you, of course. Okay, so here we are at the 30-minute pose, and I'm going to start this and work through it exactly the same way as 20-minute pose, but I'm going to try and take things a little bit more precise, and I'm going to start breaking down the eyes and nose a bit more. So once I've got my center line in and the angle of our head, I'm going to divide it up into thirds and also find that midpoint. Now this is a bit tricky because she's angled a little bit more towards us than away from us. It's not a pure profile. So the oval will be about 1/3 length wide on one side, but be less so on the other side. For the back oval, I measured how wide it was and then put it in. And then we've got the ear on that crossing, as well as the jawline and the lip. And I'm just going to put the neck in as well. Okay, so now I've got most of the features in. I actually realized that she's got a lot more of a wide jaw than average, so I'm going to move that ear and the jaw more to the right. And again, just shading in the top lip, the bottom of the nose, and the eye sockets. And the eye socket should come about halfway the nose. And now I've gotten a general idea of her skull. I'm going to put some hair in on top. And like we said in the 20-minute pose, the nose is sort of a rough wedge shape, so that's what I'm putting in. And a square shape for the chin, for instance. And the cheekbones, the bottom of them, will be in line with the nose. And the measurement of the corners of the mouth, I'm going to take those from what I learned in the 20-minute pose, which is that they're about 1/3 of the eye socket. Now for the measurements of the eye, I'm going to take that same sort of measurement, so it should be about 1/5, except that on that other side, we won't have the space for those eyes. Now for this last pose, I'm going to start breaking things like this a little bit further down. So Hogarth goes on about the common shapes of the eyes. And one thing that he says is that the high point of the eye is more on the left, so the inner corner, and the lower point of the bottom lid is more on the outside corner. So it's sort of a diamond shape, maybe. So if you look at a straight line like that, it's going to be highest on the top like there, and then lowest on the bottom like that. So it's sort of a diamond-ish shape. And now I'm going to go in with my brush and just shade those general areas. Now once I've shaded those in, I like to go in with my rubber and pick some key places out. So the first thing will be the high point of her brow. That's usually where the bone is, so you can feel it on your own skin as well. And that's where the light gets caught. The second one is there's always a square of light on the outer corner connecting with the outer corner of that eye. And there's another square on the inner corner that connects with the inner corner of the eye. So that's the general shape of the eye socket. And now I can start erasing in there. So I start by going from the outer corner and trying to find that lower lid, just following that line I've already put on. And I can also put on a slightly darker accent for the top lid there. Okay, so now we've got the lid sorted, but not actually the actual bulge of the eye. So if you look at my drawing on the left, underneath that you should imagine there's a sphere that turns it round. And the same thing is in our eye sockets. And within that sphere, there's of course the sphere as well of the iris. And that's usually is about 1/3 of that eyeball. And you can see how that roundness would influence the shapes. So for me, that's a really easy way to make sure that I've got an idea of where those shapes should be. Okay, so that's one eye more or less sorted, and now I'm going to work on the nose because I'd like to bring that up to speed a little bit. So first of all, we've got that wedge shape, and it goes in where the brow line is, and it goes underneath the nose. The nose exists of two different planes. You've got the top one, which is the bone, and then the lower half, which is the cartilage. So the bone sort of narrows towards the middle, and then the cartilage sort of widens towards the bulge of the tip of the nose. Now breaking the mouth down a little bit more. Again, thinking of that barrel shape, that sort of tubular shape, and then putting the lips on top. So the lips sort of curve downwards generally, but the corners of the mouth slightly go up usually, and the inner point, the very midpoint, slightly lowers into sort of arrow shape. Okay, so those are the main areas of the face all done. Now I'm going to speed up the last bit of the video a little bit more so you can see how I would refine this a little bit more. There's a lot of back and forth. I'd add a little bit, subtract a little bit, but maybe that's useful as well. Okay, so hopefully that gave you an idea of how I would refine a drawing. As you can see, it's very slow, that last bit. So the main things I change at the beginning. And otherwise we are done. So hopefully you enjoyed yourself and learned something. And if you have any requests for future videos, let me know. And otherwise I will see you Sunday, I believe, because we've got a very exciting guest artist for Wednesday again.
Thank you for taking part. Don't forget to photograph your work and post it on Instagram and hashtag it with #RawUmberLive. I'd like to thank Lizet Dingemans for drawing along with us today, and you can download the photographs you've seen in this week's session from the link I'm about to show you on the screen. We run free portrait drawing sessions every Sunday at 2 p.m. For next Wednesday's figure drawing session, we have a guest artist. David Chevlina will be drawing Tatiana. You can also see previous sessions on our website, rawumberstudios.com.